Hello, everyone. I'm excited to bring a CEO chat here together with Doug Tate from Alpha Technologies and CEO Jeff Reedy from Scale Computing. Today, we're going to touch on the partnership that Alpha Technologies and Scale Computing is working on. So with that, Doug, let's have you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background on Alpha Technologies and kind of the markets that you're serving.
Okay. I'm Doug Tate with Alpha Technologies. Been started this company roughly 20 years ago. Our focus in this area is to provide value-added resources to companies, trying to bridge the gap between financial, business, and geek to provide solutions that work for our customers.
So give me a little bit of background on how you found Scale Computing and how you're using the Scale Computing solutions and technologies kind of for your end users.
Certainly. We've used just about all brands of technology. We've used some of the bigger boys, the EMCs and the Nimbles / HPs. But in this area, we were looking for a solution that really provided quality storage and replication type services to the small to medium business, which is predominantly what our state is made up of. So through some reading and just vendor trial and errors, we kind of got in touch with Scale, and Scale got in touch with us, and we started building a partnership. And that took a little bit of time for us to get that partnership going, because we wanted to do some due diligence on our side to make sure the product worked as well as Scale said it did. And once we reached the top of that peak, we were then marketing it and showing it to the customers that we have from not only a price perspective, but a value, a technology overview. And from that point, it's been just gangbusters with our customers who see the value. We're able to afford the product, and it solves their need, plus gives them room to grow into future markets and future business objectives that they may have.
So Jeff, let's go back over to you. Let's have you introduce yourself and a little bit of Scale Computing, but talk specifically about the Scale Computing technology and how we've developed that for that SMB market and allowing these MSPs to go out with this product.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Jeff Reedy. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Scale Computing. We've been in business about 14 years ourselves now. And, really we provide infrastructure solutions, server storage, virtualization for companies of all sizes, really. But I think what is maybe unique to Scale, Doug was touched on some of this, is that our roots are really in the SMB. I think so often you find that the products which vendors bring to the SMB and the mid-market are often products that were built for large enterprise, and effectively is the old version that they lowered the price on and maybe stripped a few features out of. And at Scale, we took a very different approach. We built the product originally for the SMB and have scaled it up from there. And in fact, the product that we sell to the Fortune 500 is identical to what we sell to the SMB. And my personal roots go back. My father was called information systems back then, but he was an IT guy, as we'd refer to them now, for a mid-size industrial construction company in Chicago. And I saw firsthand, right, that dealing with the limited staff and limited budgets that go with the SMB and the mid-market, yet had all the same problems that they have at the large enterprise. And so, in fact, I think the environment's more complicated, right? And, simplicity is that much more important. The ease of use, the simplicity, the reliability, right? The idea that when something goes wrong, you've only got a handful of folks that can go in there and fix it, right? It's not necessarily 24/7 staff. And so we built the product kind of from the ground up for the SMB, and across our 30,000 deployments, certainly the lion's share of those are SMB mid-market type. And we therefore work specifically with folks like Doug and the Alpha Tech team to to reach that market, right? Doug, you guys know what your specific customers need, right? You're the trusted advisor in those accounts, and we're providing tools and software and technology to help make those guys successful. And so together, right, knowing that environment, being a trusted advisor, us bringing technology specifically built for that environment, I think creates a pretty powerful solution.
Yeah. And so, Doug, let's talk, because you're so close to that end user and you understand that end user so much. Let's talk a little bit about some of those challenges that SMB owners are facing when it comes to that technology adoption. It comes to that digital transformation, all of these, things that they're really having to bring in to make their bottom line and make their company successful. Let's talk about some of those examples that you're seeing out there.
Certainly. So in our world, we jokingly say, from a geek side, we can split atoms with toothpicks. But if I can't tie a business relevance to the technology, it's useless. So in the small to medium market specifically, there's not a lot of proactive or value placed on IT. It's a lot of reactive. I have to have this. I have to have that. And what Scale has done is it's really focused on bringing all of those features that the bigger companies and the big boys want or have to the smaller market in an affordable fashion that not only provide those resources and those benefits, but allows us as a value added reseller and a managed service provider to not only put the product in there, but help get part of their vision focused on turning it from a reactive IT to proactively including that in the next vision and direction that the company's focusing on by having the infrastructure in there that could support whatever direction they go, whatever geek they need to keep their business moving forward.
And so, Jeff, it's always interesting as a technology company. I think a lot of folks look at us as, they're building every feature that the end user needs. They're building every feature that's, asked from the customer. Talk a little bit about how, Scale has focused on the channel and the MSP specific and some of the things that we've done with the technology to help Doug and his team.
Yeah, I think that, again, going back to those personal roots, right? I mean, even my career in technology, started working at a local channel partner where I was growing up, right? So I know how that relationship works between guys like Doug and those customers, right? I also am very familiar with a little bit of what Doug was just talking about, which is, IT in that market generally is viewed as sort of an expense, right? An unnecessary expense. It's not, very few SMB, IT professionals have the luxury of being viewed as a strategic asset, right? And so, and look, it's because so often they've got such a hodgepodge of different parts and pieces and software they're trying to piece together. It's kind of like being the one man mechanic keeping a Ferrari running, right? I mean, there's all these things, and that's supposed to have a team of guys in a pit, right? And our vision was, well, like, what the customer needed was a Honda Accord, right? Everything just worked. You just got in and drove, and that gave you a very different experience. And so, we from day one, not only had that vision for the technology, but knew that the guy who was going to hand over the keys to that Accord was Doug, right? And so, we engaged right from the beginning with the channel and have been, partner focused the entire time. And we take a tremendous amount of feedback from the partners and building the right solutions, because, a mistake that it'd be easy, right, for a vendor to make is to say, well, okay, the customer needs X, Y, and Z, and so we have to build X, Y, and Z into the product, perhaps at the expense of making the product more complicated, making it more expensive, et cetera, when in fact, maybe X and Y are services already provided by, partners like Alpha Tech. So it's sort of, making the product fit not just the customer needs, but fit with how that channel works. And this is where the partnership really shines, right? When Doug goes in there, and these guys know okay, this customer has this, initiative coming up and these things that are aging out and this kind of budget, and they're going to start putting together a plan, often months, if not years in advance, right? Working with these guys. I'm sure, Doug, you probably have partners that you've worked with for decades at this stage, right? So intimately what's going on there. And, we want to provide not just a great product and experience for the end customer, but effectively the tools that you guys can use to make those guys successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Doug, as you're out, and you mentioned some of those other vendors that you've worked with in the past, talk about how the MSP kind of being the torchbearer for that end user and going into digital transformation, edge computing, whatever it may be. We've touched on the SMB here a little bit, and I know that's a focus and has been for Scale, and it sounds like it is for you as well. But talk about what this partnership together is bringing to your team in regards to new services, new solutions, new things that you're going to be able to provide as you start to look at edge computing and some of those other things. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Certainly. So our role, and Jeff alluded to it earlier, is we are that trusted advisor. So the partnership that Alpha brings together with Scale and our customers is that we understand our customers' needs. Scale understands what our needs are as a integrator, sales team, hands in the equipment, and together we're able to bring some of the customers' needs back to Scale. Scale give us new features to go back and forth. And so as we come up with new ideas and we're doing some testing and evaluation with some newer cutting edge type stuff related to some engineering and AutoCAD. Those are features that nobody else in the market is doing effectively. But the partnership between Scale and Alpha has allowed us to bring our market needs. We're a heavy industry state, mining, reclamation, those things that use unique file sets that necessarily don't work well on an edge computing, but they do on yours. We've recently flipped a customer who was a managed services customer for ours for at least 10 years. 2 reiterations of VDI to your edge computing and edge desktop solution, and they love it. Before the pain point was keeping people technically certified. They go through, we pay for those accreditations, and then they find a job out of state making twice the money. We're a small company. So how do you keep those there? And against that partnership between Scale and us that says, how do we make this work? Your product just works, and it's not, it's not having 3 years of higher level college to figure out how to make it work. It just works. And we have yet to run into a situation that it wasn't a fit. Now, I'm sure there's some large companies where the IOPS are such that I may have trouble, jokingly scaling to that, but we haven't hit that yet. And we're in the process of flipping colleges and universities and state and local governments over that before would have never looked at the product because it wasn't one of the big 3. So we've been able to go in and give them examples of this is what, as a local partner, we bring to the table. This is what, as a manufacturer and vendor, that you bring to the table, and together the customers love it. Again, and they're keep using the same term in their terminology. It just works.
And we always love to hear that. And sometimes the end users don't believe us or the MSP when we say it just works until they actually touch it. But I think there's something in the industry right now that, we've talked about SMBs here and we've talked about edge computing. And I think people are like, how in the world are they talking about these same things? And something that, Jeff has talked about in, past conversations, and he and I have even had this conversation. Jeff, maybe touch on how the Scale computing solution is bridging that gap, and what our technology is and why it's a fit for SMB and why it's a fit for distributed enterprise or edge computing.
Yeah, I mean, at its root, right? I mean, the Scale computing solution is a platform for running applications, right? It delivers high availability, business resilience, scalability, ease of use, all these different things. But at the end of the day, it's something that runs your software, right? It's the hardware, it's the software, it's that whole stack. and it's self-healing and it has these different capabilities. But as we talk about terms like edge computing, right? I mean, we joke at Scale that we've been doing edge computing since before it had a cool marketing name, right? I mean, it's basically computing outside the data center, right? And so if you have, Doug, if you've got, customers who have, factory floor, or it's a mine or something, and there's something running physically on their campus, in their building, in a server room, next to machinery, right? That is the modern definition. That's called edge computing, right? And so the question becomes, well, what are the challenges of edge computing? What are the challenges of running, infrastructure which is away from the data center? Primarily, it's ease of use, manageability, high availability, right? When something breaks, how do you fix it? How do you prevent it from breaking? And so those same features and functions that we've been providing for, 14 years in the data center now apply directly to what's running out there. And in fact, I think that in many ways, the SMB, the mid-market, the classic industrial type customer that you're talking about are those who have had less stuff in the cloud as a percentage of their overall business, right? Because of the way that those businesses have to function, right? I mean, in some cases, civil unrest breaks out around the building, right? I mean, you need that kind of resiliency. And so, being able to provide effectively just a solution that runs the applications, where those applications run shouldn't really be the main area of conversation. Run the application wherever it makes the most sense, right? Email, yeah, you're probably running that in the cloud. That would make a lot of sense. On the other hand, the ERP, the MRP system, maybe not, depends on the specifics of that customer, right? Are you going to do, when we think about stuff that's coming, right? And some people are doing this now, but there's obviously a lot to talk about AI, and I'm not talking only generative AI, right? Just AI generally. We see lots of customers in industrial settings using video cameras and running applications that are doing AI analytics on those video feeds, right? Are you going to stream 150 cameras into the cloud at 4K to do some processing and then send the results back? Probably not, right? Not only is the bandwidth an issue, but the cost of doing that probably also an issue. And so, being able to put in a platform that takes care of today's problems, but also sets the stage to say, okay, maybe you're not deploying that AI analytics app today, but next year, 5 years from now, maybe you want to be thinking about that. And are you putting a platform in place today that can handle those workloads in the future?
And as we look at that, end user putting those solutions into place, Doug, let's go back to your side and talk about the MSP's role in being that partner. Because you start to put these things everywhere, and there's a lot of compounded costs that come across everything, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's management, whatever that may be. So talk about how, partnering with an MSP that understands the edge. Let's talk about the financial advantages for those end users working with someone like you.
Well, there's two parts to that. As the owner of data centers, I would love for nothing more for everything to be in my data center. But as the MSP, my job is to create that collaboration with our customers and our vendors. And so what we found with the Scale is that I have the flexibility of when it needs to be centrally located, I can do that. When I need to have distributed nodes and distributed systems at the customer's edge because the cost of bandwidth is such, or I'm in the middle of a remote location that doesn't have high capacity lines back, I can use your product as well. So what we have found in our niche market here is that we have to come up with solutions for everybody based on their business needs. We look at what the current business need is now. We try to forecast where it's going to go. We try to extract that vision, but in the small to medium business, a lot of CEOs aren't true vision casters. They're just doing what they have to do to make ends meet. And together with this partnership, we've been able to not only do solutions that solve the problem now, but future-proof it, allowing them to use both MSP models. Some of it's managed on site by us, utilizing their staff if they have staff. We don't want to, disperse or displace additional staff members. We want to partner. Your solution fits every one of those variables that, based on what the customer needs, based on what the business requirements are, it fits that model.
And so I think we've covered the technology, the partnerships, what everyone's providing to the end users. So, I think kind of in closing, if we want, Doug, what's the future look like over the next 5 years, for relationships like this, between the technology vendors and MSPs and the end users and the MSPs? I know we've touched on quite a bit of that, but, maybe we can just wrap that up and close out here with a closing statement around the next 5 years. What's it look like?
Yeah, I think when you look at the next 5 years, you kind of have to look at what's going on now. There's this huge push to go to the Amazon and Azures. And so customers come in and they say, we want everything in the cloud, but they don't really understand what the cloud is. They don't understand what it means to their business. They don't understand all the variables that go into that. So I think the next 5 years, you're going to see a decentralization of the big clouds going back to the smaller ones that focus on speed, savings on capital, OpEx and CapEx costs. How does a small business or a medium-sized business stay relevant when they're going up against a larger one? I think we are beginning to see that diversification where some of it's local. Jeff made an example is, why run Exchange in my data center when I can put it in the cloud cheaper than I can run it internally? But there's this hybrid movement, which I think is what we're going to see in the near future, which is pushing that basically that processing as close to the edge as you can, with the confines of how does it fit the business model and bridging that gap. And I don't think the long term that's going to be an Azure or an AWS unless they push farther into the community. And I think that's going to be a hindrance based on available bandwidth and circuits and fiber and all the good stuff that goes with that.
So I think, Jeff, I'll give you that final opportunity for your thoughts in the next 5 years. What's the MSP out to the end user for Edge? Where do you think that's headed?
Yeah, I mean, Doug really, I think, hit the nail on the head. And if you think about, okay, if to follow up on his last thought there, if an Amazon or a Google, were to magically extend out, right? Who's going to know more about that local business? Some executive at AWS or Doug, who went to lunch with the guy last week, right? I mean, obviously there's no contest. And, the entire idea of, should we quote unquote move to the cloud or somewhere else, right? Is primarily driven because the old way of doing infrastructure on site, or what we now call the edge, was very labor intensive, right? You had to babysit those servers and fix them all the time and do all these things. And so the cloud basically makes that somebody else's problem, right? That's part of the appeal there, right? There's certain applications certainly that run great in the cloud, but the idea that we're going to quote move everything to the cloud, right? Whenever I hear that, that's because you just think it becomes somebody else's problem, right? If we can solve that problem another way, right, that is less expensive and is easier, then that's really interesting. And I'll close with this thought, right? One of the things with if you go with Scale and Alpha Technologies, right, what I can tell you is the end result is going to feel different than the way you've thought about IT for a long time, right? If I roll the clock back, and I'm not picking on these guys because I know CEO and it was a great company, but when Data Domain appeared many years ago, it is a deduplication technology. It worked great. That is a very technical thing that came and did one very technical thing to deal with local infrastructure. That is not the kind of solution we're talking about here. We're talking about something that's going to come in. It's going to, with the Scale stuff, it can do a lot of different things. It's going to be super easy to use. You're going to have Alpha Technologies in there, getting it all working and telling you exactly what applications should run locally, what can run in the data center, what should run in the cloud. And the end experience is just going to be very, very different. And that harkens back to, I'll wrap it back around at the very beginning of the conversation, right? My roots and when I saw my dad as the information systems guy back in the day, right? His favorite vendor, and I'll use the term vendor loosely here, was IBM, right? So early in his career, right, IBM provided basically all of the infrastructure. That infrastructure was supported by IBM, partners and resellers who were there local to him. And when my dad really liked IBM, it was all of those pieces, right? The product, the reliability, the people who worked at IBM, the people who were the IBM channel partners who understood his business. They could call him, they'd go to lunch, like I was just saying, they'd learn what was going on and they could handle it. And over time, right, just because of the rise of client server and Windows and all these different things, like that all sort of went away, right? It all became now a bunch of chasing bits and bytes and technology pieces and trying to hold it all together. And I think what we're talking about here is the return of that sort of IBM feel, right? It's like, okay, there's a product that works. And once the underlying infrastructure works, now you can worry about the sort of forward-facing applications and services that make your business successful, right? You don't need to worry about infrastructure, right? You're worried about, hey, what's the, better, business intelligence reporting or things like this that, and I see Doug nodding, right? Like if IT can provide the president or the CEO of the business better business intelligence, the smile comes to their face, right? As opposed to, hey, we need to buy new servers, right? There's a frown there, right? So we can turn that conversation around, and that's really what the partnership's all about.
Yeah, and so we've covered a lot here, and I just want to say, Doug, thanks for coming together with us to have this conversation with Jeff. It's always comforting for me to get two executives that have a lot of knowledge of the industry and historical knowledge of the industry of where it's been, but executives that have that vision of where it's going, because in the long run, we're all here to serve that end user, and the end users, who we want to get the biggest bang for their buck and provide the greatest services to. And, in this conversation between Alpha Technologies and Scale Computing and executive leadership, top to bottom, I think that we're definitely doing that. And we always love working with our partners, as Jeff has mentioned, that, know how to serve that industry, and especially that industry in that specific region, or geography. And so again, thanks for coming together with Jeff. We appreciate it. And we look to a long running relationship here.
Thank you.
Thank you.